Welcome, folks. It's been far too long, and I am incredibly excited to be back for a really important discussion for ACE Week on the intersection of disability and asexuality, joined by some amazing, amazing folks today. And we also will be unveiling a brand new podcast emote, which has been a long time coming for this podcast. And I'm so incredibly excited to finally have a podcast emote that folks can use. So we will, I guess, go clockwise around the screen, starting with Mick, then Busby, then Devin, and then Raven. I'll start, and then we'll go that way on the screen and introduce ourselves. So hi, my name is Ty EYE, host of the ASPEC podcast. I like to say that I'm a PhD candidate by day and an Aero ASPEC advocate, activist, and co-facilitator of an in-person IRL ACE and Aero support group, and really have enjoyed this podcast over the last, 1 year and 2 months now that it's been going on, because it started in June, I believe, late June of last year. So yeah, it's been no 1 year 4 months. I can't count apparently. So episode 36, the ACE Week panel. Welcome on in, folks. So good to see everyone. And that's enough about me. Let's introduce the panelists, starting with Mick. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Mick, or Micktastic. I'm an ace, Aero, and agender content creator and musician. I also do pottery on the side. Yeah, wait, did I? Okay, I unmuted myself. I was looking at the stream, but it still had me muted, and I was like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I think that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Busby, you're next up.
Yeah, hi. I am Busby, as you might have guessed. I am a variety streamer, activist, and advocate. I'm asexual, non-binary / gender fluid. I use they them pronouns, and this is actually one of the multiple times I've been on the podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've been on here a couple times. Devin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Devin. My pronouns are they, their, vis. I'm a longtime ACE advocate, activist, speaker. I've spoken at everything from local college campuses up to international conferences. I use the labels asexual, pansensual, demi-polyromantic, and genderless. More specifically, I tend to identify as gender vague, but in broader spaces, I will use the labels agender or non-binary because those are far more likely to be understood. I'm on the board of the local LGBTQ resource center. I help run the local pride, and I am disabled on many axes.
So glad you could join us today for this wonderful discussion, and I'm looking forward to getting into the details very soon. But let's introduce Raven now.
Hi there. I'm the Demented Raven. You can call me Raven. I am a disabled Scottish variety caster and a freelance composer. I'm also asexual, bigender, non-binary, and panromantic. And I'm also disabled. I suffer from multiple conditions. I've got arthritis, I've got EDS, I've got fibromyalgia, I've got endometriosis, and a bunch of other stuff as well.
Thank you so much again for joining us. I might have to, I think I've increased your volume as much as I can on my end. Is there any way to bump up your mic volume at all?
It's me. Okay. I'll double check. I'll just double check. I know it's been very, very awkward. Uh, da- ba- da- ba- da. Uh, da- ba- da- ba- da- ba- da. Hold on, I'll just double check. I know I thought everything was fine, but that's technical issues, ain't
That's
it?
better. That's better.
Oh, I fixed it. Okay. Okay, I just talk louder as well. So, but yes, hello. Hi, everyone. Hope you're well. Hope you're grand. I hope you heard me. I apologize if I'm too quiet.
Yes, Popper. Good, always good to see Doggo.
Oh my gosh!
This is my servant dog, Olive.
Baby!
Very grateful for her and her assistance, and she's being extremely cuddly right now.
Aw.
Oh, my heart! My heart!
Aw.
Oh, sweet bean. My
I'm not
dog's
sure.
downstairs.
Her head on me as much as she can. Oh, there she goes.
So cute, absolutely. So, I guess, how do we want to do this? Do we want to start with the emote reveal, or do we do that a little bit later in stream? What do you think?
Show us. Show us. Show
All
us.
right, we got it. So, drum roll. Are folks ready for the podcast emote reveal?
Yes.
All right, let's do this in 3, 2, 1. Quartzy, aka Cosmic Quartz, made
Oh
this
my gosh.
absolutely amazing A-Spec podcast emote, and I am so happy with how it turned out. I'll pop it in the chat here as well.
I love it.
Doesn't it
Cosmic
look
Quartz did
amazing?
that. Oh my
Doesn't it
god.
look fantastic?
Wow, that is
I'm
spectacular.
so happy with how it turned out. I'm going to also shout out Cosmic Quartz, the artist of this emote.
Yay!
Quartzy has appeared on the podcast in the past. Also, an absolutely fantastic advocate for, the disabled community, disabled
Yep.
gamers. Quartzy does so much amazing stuff. So I'm so glad I was able to commission Fair. Shout Fair out. There we go. So, A-Spec podcast emote. So incredibly excited that folks can now use it in the chat.
I love it. I love it.
I need to figure this out. Maybe what I do is for podcast streams, I make it a follower emote, and for other streams, you gotta be subbed.
Ooh, interesting idea.
Yeah, because I want folks to be able to use it during the podcast. But if you want access to it all the time, you got to be subbed. I think that's what we'll do. That's probably a good trade-off.
Yeah.
So let me make that switch in the dashboard, and then let's get started with today's topic. So I think it's important to talk a little bit about Ace Week, given that it is currently Ace Week. So just a little bit of a preamble about where Ace Week came from and kind of a little bit of history about it. So Ace Week first began in 2010, so 15 years ago. And at that time, it was originally named ACE Awareness Week. And its initial goal, not surprisingly, was to increase awareness and understanding of the ACE identity within broader queer communities. It also had a broader aim of being able to get asexuality on the radar of the National LGBTQ Task Force and UN Human Rights Council. So that was one of the initial aims of ACE Week back when it was first started. In its first year, it mostly happened online with a focus on blogging and social media posts. And then from 2011 onwards, they started hosting or including in-person events around the world, some of which are posted on the ACE Week website, which you can access. It's just aceweek.org. I'll pop that in the chat. And you go to aceweek.org/events. You'll actually see this podcast episode listed under the events this year. So you can check out the ACE Week events going on. And they include some events outside the ACE Week window as well. Nothing on the docket for tomorrow, it looks like, but the Fruities ACE Week raid train was also included on there, which was amazing.
Yep.
And so 2019 comes around, and I think, at that point, we've come to realize that a little bit more than just awareness is required. And so Asexual Awareness Week was renamed to its current name, ACE Week, reflecting the fact that ACE Week has become more than merely an educational and an awareness campaign, but really a time to celebrate and uplift ACE identity. So 2019 onwards, it's been known as its current name, ACE Week. So reflecting on this a little bit, I want to ask folks, why are dates like ACE Week and April 6th, International Asexuality Day, IAD, important? Thinking about this, we can reflect on things like, the invisibility of asexuality and the many, many myriad misunderstandings around it. So why are they important, and why do we need to go beyond merely an educational and awareness campaign? Does anybody want to start, or should we go in the clockwise order here?
I mean, I'm fine with whatever.
Mick, go ahead.
I don't know. I think it's important because it gets people talking, and then when people talk, they ask questions, and then we can be like, hey, like, this is important to me because XYZ, and then more people become aware. And I mean, sure, you get, I guess, the bad seeds that are asking in bad faith, but a lot of people just don't know, and then you get the opportunity to tell them, and then they become more aware.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's what I think.
And there's still a lot of folks that don't really understand, what it is to be asexual. Yep. And there's so many myriad misunderstandings around asexuality. Absolutely. Yeah. Raven, you looked like you wanted to say something, or should we just go clockwise again and go to Busby?
I don't mind rambling if Busby's
sure,
okay with
go
that.
for it. Go for it.
Okay. What was it? As well as like education and acceptance, as they say, it's good to like have the actual people that are ace unload their experiences so that people understand, and also explain the different types of asexuality, because it's like an umbrella. It's like there's like grey ace and like demi asexual as well, and a lot of people are completely unaware that there's of that. They think it's just asexuality, but it's actually a much more broad spectrum of it. And not just that, it's also been misinterpreted. Like it's just like, oh, some people mistaken it for celibacy, some people mistaken it for this and that, and it's good just to like remind people what it truly is, because it's like people just don't know. It's like obviously you get like bad seeds and that, like Mick said, but obviously there's like people that are just completely oblivious, and it just needs to be more out there, if that makes sense. So that's what, like, one of many reasons why these days are important. It's like of course education, but like everything else, experience, all that jazz, you know what I mean? Hold on, Ty's talking, but I don't hear Ty anymore.
Oh yeah, I can't hear Ty either.
Oh,
Ty-
sorry. There we go. I had muted myself on my mic. I was just agreeing wholeheartedly, saying, and that's why it's really important to uplift ace voices,
Yes.
and really account for those intersecting identities, because without
I agree.
accounting for intersectionality, we can't really talk about what it means to be ace and what it
I agree.
means to
Yep.
what asexuality, what ace experiences actually look like.
Exactly.
Devin or Busby?
I can certainly go.
Sure.
Busby. Okay. I think for me, the two biggest aspects where the importance really comes in are, one, the awareness for folks who might be on the A spectrum and not even realize it. I think literally every time I've given a presentation or a speech or something, there's someone who shows up thinking it's something that's like completely foreign. And at the end, they come to talk to me and it's like, I've felt this way for ages and I never knew the term for any of it. Um, and like I've had people like up into their like 60s, 70s who've told me that they've spent 50 plus years feeling broken, feeling like they don't understand that aspect of society, etc. And that they finally have like an answer, a name for it. And words have so much power. Having those words, it like gives so much power. And then the other side of it is just educating folks not on like who aren't part of on the spectrum part of the community, because there's a lot of misconceptions over the difference between attraction and drive and behavior, as Raven mentioned with mistaking it with celibacy. Like that's a behavior thing, not an orientation thing. Or some people, which if someone has no libido and identifies as ace, that's completely valid. But people make the assumption that asexual means non-sexual, and that's completely false. And just spreading more education and awareness around that aspect as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree. Literally, I made a thread about asexuality a few months ago or whatever, and I brought it back for Ace Week, and I'm still like, I obviously explained like the difference between like what sexual attraction is and what sex drive is, like attraction versus libido. And I brought that back for Ace Week this week, and I'm still having people commenting on it, going, oh, wow, I had literally like no idea what the difference is here. I thought that I couldn't be asexual because I still experienced a sex drive, because people don't realize the difference, where it's like a sex drive is basically you get horny for no reason whatsoever. And then sexual attraction is like you want to have sex with a specific particular person. So you can be like, you can have a sex drive and also like be asexual. It's two completely different things, and people really still don't grasp that very well. So I think that like little like things that seem like little details like that but really aren't little details like that, the education on those things is still incredibly important. Like people think that, oh, a lot of people know about asexuality as like just a general term, but they really don't actually understand it at all on the actual detailed issues like that.
No. Are y'all familiar with the refrigerator analogy?
Possibly.
I
Remind me again.
think so.
So it's what I find to be the most useful. I think I first wrote it on Tumblr in like 2014, 2013. But it has spread since then. People have added their own twist. But essentially, it's equating the difference in drive and attraction to something that people who aren't on the A spectrum might understand better, which is equating it to hunger and craving of food. And then you can take the analogy and be like, so have you ever been like hungry, but you like go to the fridge and just nothing looks good? That's the equivalent of being ace and having a sex drive. Alternatively, you can really crave a food and not be hungry. And it also completely valid. And that's an analogy of someone who doesn't have a libido but is not asexual. Like they still experience the attraction, but they don't have the drive. And then you can take it further because there's also other reasons to eat food, just like someone might have other reasons to have sex. Like maybe it's someone you really care about made you cookies. So it's just an analogy that I found really helps explain how someone can be asexual and still have a drive, because I think that feeling of like you're hungry but like nothing really sounds good is a pretty common experience, and it really helps put it in terms that people understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I might steal that actually.
Yeah, I've heard it as the cereal analogy as well. I've heard it in the context of cereal, but the exact same analogy. You know, you might be hungry for cereal, but there's not a particular cereal that interests you. So same sort of idea. But welcome on in, Scott's Cabers. Good to see you, fellow
Hi.
community member from Raven's channel. Good, and also, sorry, from Busby's channel. Good to see you. We be doing really well. I'm excited to be back with the podcast today. It's been far too long. It was just so busy with all the raid trains, the Fruity's Masquerade, the Ace Week raid train. It was so hard to schedule this. So we managed to sneak it in right at the tail end of Ace Week, and I'm glad we're able to do that. And it's so lovely to have everyone here today. And also, thank you so much for being super flexible in organizing this. It was definitely hard to get everybody's schedules to align.
Time zones.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for people who are flexible, a group of disabled aces is the place to go.
Yeah, literally.
True.
Well played.
I like it so much.
That's great.
I'm also going to apologize for camera shaking. Olive is wagging her tail so much that she's shaking the table that it's clipped to.
Aww. Aww.
Aw.
So with this question, you know, absolutely, education is still truly important, and there's a lot of misconceptions around asexuality that still need to be communicated. Can you think of any reasons why a surface level, just sort of awareness campaign is, we probably need to go beyond just that surface level education at this point for things like Ace Week and International Asexuality Day?
I can jump in on this right away. I think the biggest things is because the surface level still leaves a lot of space for misconceptions and lack of awareness. Like, especially when you look at intersections in like both just identity intersections and niches within the community, there's so much like just misconceptions and just lack of understanding, and that can be really like harmful for folks either in the community who feel like, oh well, I consider myself asexual, but this other person is saying I'm not because I enjoy sex or because I uh, don't have a romantic orientation or I don't use the split attraction model at all. Like people, there's a lot of in community thing, and then there's also the like looking back, I don't know how many of y'all were active online during the exclusionary doxing. I want to say that was like 2014-ish, 13. There was a huge trend in the online LGBTQ community that, oh, aces aren't part of the queer community. And if you were a content creator at the time, which there were not a whole lot of us, we all got doxxed. Like our addresses were published, we got hate mail, we got death threats for daring to consider ourselves part of the queer community. And like,
Oh
not even looking at just asexuality, they were telling people they weren't queer. Like, I was openly in a relationship with people of multiple genders and like non-binary, and was being told I wasn't queer because I was ace, because apparently that somehow overshadowed everything else. Like, even if they didn't consider asexuality queer, which I do, and I feel that anyone who wishes to use that label, like the label queer, which I know there's some people with trauma around it, I've been there myself. So I'm not forcing it on anybody, but the excludes like doxing way back in the, again, I want to say it was like 2014, back when social media was primarily like Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook, at least for the ace community. It was so wild. Going off of the comment that I see, as someone who's also intersex, that that happens to that community as well. The intersex
Yeah.
community is told that they're not part of the queer community, which some don't want to be. And again, not going to be like, hey, you, if you're intersex, you are queer, because there's plenty of intersex folks who do not identify as queer in any way, shape, or form. But if someone is intersex and feels that that makes them queer, then that makes them queer.
yeah.
Full stop. It's not your job to decide the label. That's their job. You shouldn't ever be
Exactly.
telling somebody what their identity is or isn't at all. And as Oni said, ace and bi folks get along really well because of the very similar degrees of erasure that both identities experience. Absolutely.
I have a really good story to highlight that, but I want to give other folks a chance to answer the question before I come back to that story.
Absolutely. Mick
Okay.
or Busby?
I think Mick was trying to say something, unless I'm like tripping.
I wasn't, but I do have things to say. but
Absolutely, go
I
for it.
could wait. You can go, Busby.
Okay. For me, I think that one of the reasons why going beyond like just the educational standpoint is important is because I see a trend where in trying to be like educational about stuff, the information around asexuality becomes more like cut and dried, and you kind of lose that like gray area that is very important to actually acknowledge and include. Obviously, like not even to leave out like gray sexuality, right? Like it's literally in the name, like gray sexuality. But like nowadays it has expanded a little bit more to kind of include like, okay, so you've got asexuality, you've got gray sexuality, you've got demisexuality, but then that leaves out all of the other things too, like fictosexual people, like phrasexual people, like all of that stuff. I could literally go down the list because there's like 60 different like sub identities within the asexual community, and the lens of this cut and dried, like there's like 4 identities within the community, doesn't do it justice. I think moving beyond educating is like really important because it takes away that black and white thinking of like, okay, these are like the four main identities, and like if you're asexual, like you can't have sex or anything like that, or like if you're gray sexual, if you have like sex more than like 5 times a year or whatever, you're no longer like gray sexual, like that type of shit. And it brings in the actual like personalized experiences. It personalizes things. It brings it down to a personal level where more people are able to actually relate to it and understand a lot better, because if you can personally relate to someone's experience and they put it in language that you can actually understand from a personal standpoint, you're more likely to actually really understand, and that level of knowledge is more likely to actually stick with you and like sink in, instead of like, oh, I just read some like little graphic on Twitter that had like 5 words about each identity, and like I read it, I scrolled past it, it's immediately out of my brain again and I don't care again.
As Chris
Well said.
mentioned, people love to put things in neat little boxes, and we don't fit in neat little boxes. Our identities
No.
don't.
No, everyone's different. And what was it? And it's like life's just chaos, and that can just be neat. And it's a weird little explanation, but you get what I'm trying to say.
I really like the quote that anyone who's ever had a cat recognizes the difference between someone else putting you in a box and you putting yourself in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Well
I thought
said.
on the like, oh well, if you don't want people put in boxes, why do you have to use all these labels? Because the ones I used at the beginning were maybe half of the labels I used just for my queer identities. Maybe less now. Actually, I've had some additional ones recently, but anyways, less than half. And people are like, oh, it's all those boxes. But that's using a label for yourself to find community, to find a box that feels right, is so
Yeah.
different from someone else trying to force you into a box that you don't fit in.
Uh-huh.
Mick, you had some things you wanted to bring up?
Yeah. It wasn't much, but I was just gonna say, like, I guess it's good to go beyond merely educating, because I know for some reason a lot of non-ace people think that asexuality is kind of like this new white person thing when it's not. And there are also a lot of people of color that are aces, so like it's just kind of weird, you know? Then again, a lot of the ace stuff that gets reposted is typically just from white people, so
Yeah. That's a good point, actually.
Really, really good point. And I've seen, in the discourse, this idea of, the white Western asexuality definition versus the concept of asexualities as a plural, incorporating a much wider lens to asexuality that accounts for the lived experiences that don't fit into the definitions that we usually talk about in white Western in the white Western discourse. And that's a really important concept to think about.
Yeah.
Because ace folks have existed throughout history.
Yep, they have.
It's
They
not
really
a new
have.
thing.
No, no. And if anyone thinks it is some like new thing or some white thing, that's not the case. People just need to open their minds and like be educated. It needs to go beyond like educating because like folks say there's like only like a few asexual like umbrella identities that are only a few are just being mentioned and there's much more. That's why one of many reasons I think Busby like explained it better than I ever could, but which is why we need to go beyond educating basically. And obviously all the other stuff that everyone's been saying, everyone's just totally great at explaining.
Absolutely. And as Oni mentioned, one of the biggest ace activists in the UK, Yasmin Benoit, who we stan,
Yes.
is
Yes.
Black asexual and hella amazing.
We stand. Yes.
Yasmin has done so much for the ace community.
I agree.
But that intersection gets so much hate, so much misogynoir, just absolutely horrid amount of hate that Yasmin experiences.
That's another thing I'd like to say. People like to like assume that an ace or ace identity has to dress a certain way. That's not the case. Yasmin just proves that you can just be yourself and still be ace. Ace is not what clothes you wear or this or that. It's your identity. It's your sexual orientation. Yes, but you are you at the end of the day, and what people think aces have to be. You're not what you are not what people say you are. You are who you are. You can be who you want to be, dress who you want to be, do whatever. Just shows that like that's another reason why to go beyond educating as well. Is like ace is not just like like some identity that someone's put in your head type thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of kinky aces as well, which we had a
That
podcast
too.
about. Caber and Sleepy Bunny were amazing. We had a really
Yes.
awesome chat about, kink in the ace community and how so many people believe that kink and asexuality are incompatible with one another. And that is not the case at all.
It reminds me of something Oni said actually. What was it? Some like writers of like content of a more sexual nature. Some of the best writers are ace people.
Hell yes, absolutely.
Uh,
So many spicy fiction writers are ace, absolutely. And you're not the first person to say that. Lass's Journal brought that up as well back during Pride Month.
It's true, chat. It's true.
Yeah, some of the kinkiest folks, some of the crudest folks I know are absolutely ace. 100%. I can't quite read what that says, Devin. Oh yeah, I see what that says now. That's great.
If y'all are familiar with the conference Creating Change, I'm actually have an application in to present on disability and kink for this year.
Hell yeah, that's amazing. I'd
With a
love to
group of-
hear more about that.
Actually, speaking of that conference, that goes back to the story about the allyship between bi and ace communities. Using bi as an umbrella term for all the super monosexual identities. But Creating Change, for those who don't know, is the nation's largest and one of the world's largest LGBTQ activism conferences. And historically, they had these identity suites, and they had a youth suite and a POC suite and a trans non-binary intersex suite, and they kept refusing to do an ACE suite. So we had like community funded, essentially, some of the bigger ACE orgs put it together, which led to some great memories. Like, I remember sitting on the floor of this suite chatting about Hamilton with David J when it first came out. David J, for those who don't know, is the person who made AVEN, the Asexuality Visibility and Education Network. He's one of the big names in asexuality.
Wow.
I also was on a panel with him about ace parenting, because parenthood and asexuality is a whole nother topic that completely separate conversation that is a very large conversation. But the ACE suite ended up like on the same floor as the bi suite, and the conference provided like free meals and everything for these suites. But the ACE suite wasn't official, so we didn't get the meals. So the bi suite counted our numbers and just would send half their food over to us whenever they brought the meals up, or whenever the conference brought any of the like inherent stuff. The like bi pan ply suite would send, like, make sure that we were like the ACE suite was taken care of. We were allowed, like, we were both welcoming, jump back and forth between the rooms, and it was just beautiful allyship. And this was back in 2013, maybe like January 2014, actually, I think is what it was. So that allyship is long lasting and very, very like strong.
Hell yeah. That's a great thank you so much for sharing that. Really, really great
Yeah.
example of, you know, the strong ties between the two communities.
Yeah.
So just looking at the time here, and just want to, you know, I like to time our breaks so that we don't get stuck in the middle of a really deep, important topic and then get hit by a wall of ads. So I'm just going to check to see what our timers like on ads. You know, I may actually, this may be a good point to maybe, what are folks thinking? Do we run the ads, take a short break here? All right, welcome back from the ads, folks. Thank you so much for sticking around. Lots and lots of great discussion already. And that's just the first question. So lots more to come. Really enjoying the discussion so far around, you know, first off, why do we still need, you know, more nuanced education around asexuality, and why is it, you know, that there's still so many misunderstandings around what asexuality actually means. And then we talked a little bit about, you know, why we need to go beyond sort of this surface level definitional understanding of asexuality, and really going and highlighting and uplifting, you know, ace folks themselves, and talking about those intersectional experiences that really account for what ace identity actually means. So, of course, one important and very overlooked intersection, unfortunately, are disabled aces. Disabled aces experience extreme amounts of erasure and discrimination, even within the ace community itself. And the intersection is a very complicated one.
Yeah.
So, you know, it unfortunately has arisen from, you know, a number, you know, many factors. First off, disabled folks are frequently infantilized and desexualized by society, And
Yep.
this unfortunately has led to, disability activism to have to fight back against this. And, statements like all disabled folks enjoy and seek sexual relationships is understandable given how desexualized and infantilized, you know, disabled folks are. However, making blanket statements like all disabled folks enjoy and seek sexual relationships leads to erasure of the experiences of many disabled ACEs and perpetuates this harmful societal assumption that the only relationships that matter are the ones which are both romantic and sexual. And then simultaneously, because asexuality has long been medicalized and pathologized, much of the ACE discourse has focused around statements like ACEs aren't broken. And I've said this myself many, many times. But where does that leave disabled ACEs? That's a difficult one. That's a really difficult one because that erases the experience of many disabled ACEs. And as Busby brought up to me earlier in discussion, the discourse around ACEs not being broken excludes ACEs who are actually asexual because of trauma or mental health struggles. And that's another really important aspect that just gets overlooked by statements like that. So in 2021, Courtney Lane, who you may know from the Ace Couples podcast, started Disabled ACE Day, which is the Wednesday of ACE Week. And it first happened in 2021.
Yeah.
With a focus on highlighting the extreme erasure and prejudice that disabled ACEs experience from multiple fronts. This year it fell on Wednesday, October 22nd. And there's some great resources posted on the ACE Week website from 2023, which I'll share in the chat here. There's a long list of academic and article-based discussions around, the intersection of disability and asexuality and lots of other things. However, I haven't seen it updated since 2023 for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
That is very strange.
I do want to point out that actually Courtney Lane had a really good podcast earlier this week talking about, the ableism in the ACE discourse. I want to grab that and share it in the chat because I think it would be... I have not had a chance to... Yo, welcome on in, Sleepy Bunny. Good to see you.
Hiya.
I actually know Courtney. She's one of the DMs for my weekly D&D campaign.
Oh wow!
I did not
That's
know
so
that. That's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah, and I actually visited her and her spouse like back in July.
Oh.
That was pretty fun.
Oh, cool.
That's epic. That's amazing. I did not know that. And happy Ace Week, Bunny. Good to see you, Sleepy Bunny. Sleepy Bunny has appeared on the podcast several times. Let me give you a shout out, Bunny.
I was with Bunny in one of them actually.
You were,
I was.
absolutely.
They were really sound and really awesome. So, hi, hello again.
I'll also shout out Chris Hangry, who appeared on the podcast as well.
Yay!
I'm just going to grab the link to the episode of the most recent Ace Couples podcast because it talks about ableism in the Ace discourse. And so I'll pop that in the chat here. Episode 213, episode 213. Wow, I can't believe there's been 213 episodes of the Ace Couple podcast.
Oh wow.
But they talk about the ableist language within the Ace discourse, which I think will be a really important one to listen for myself because I have not had the chance to listen to it yet. Any thoughts on what we talked about there before we get into some of the other things?
What does the stuff you talked about,
Around kind of the really difficult intersection that disability and asexuality exist within. Just the challenges.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like you say, like disabled folks being infant. That's the hardest word to say. Hard words are hard. Infantilized, and like desexualized by society. That is definitely true, especially with asexual people in general, but also disabled people in general. There's one thing that they'll both share in common is one thing I will definitely say, especially people think of it towards myself as I'm disabled and asexual, is when it comes to having children. For example, like parenthood and all that things, thinking like they couldn't be parents or they couldn't have children because of people's thoughts of asexuality or the whole people's thoughts of disabled people or a mishmash of both. And I am actually a parent of two. I actually have two kids, and that's also I've had times where I've said to people that I actually have children, and they're just in shock, whether it be because of my disability or because of my asexuality or even both. And it just shows, it just shows that like people shouldn't be like discriminated or whatnot or just be judged because of who they are or what they have. But that's an example I thought I'd throw in the ring, like parenthood and stuff like that. I know there's plenty of other ones as well, but I thought I'd throw that one in.
Really, really, really important one. And I know Devin alluded to it earlier as well. What are you holding up there, Devin?
Ceramic Ace flag that my oldest made for me in, like 9th grade.
Oh,
Aw, that's amazing.
Trans flag coin shaped thing around here somewhere too, but I have a very large bookcase, so finding it is a problem.
my heart.
Aw.
Oh, my
And-
kids are very supportive of my stuff. It's just
He's not Ace himself. He just wanted to make that for me.
no,
That's
sweet.
amazing. That's amazing.
I love it.
Bunny mentioned real. I'm not a parent. They have a cat, and I don't know if it's because of my disabilities or my age, but people don't take me or their words seriously. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Bunny. It happens far, far too often. And disabled aces are extremely marginalized from multiple fronts. And as you mentioned, both asexual folks and disabled folks are infantilized. And
Yes.
it basically leads to society saying, you can't have kids. How dare you?
Uh-huh. Yes, that is
Mhm.
true.
And that's another thing. I know that when I was growing up and I was like, I'm Ace when I was in like 7th grade. Everyone was like, oh, you just haven't met the right person yet. Like, you're too young. And it's like, I don't know. I knew from a pretty young age, like, how I felt about things. And, like, if I'm old enough to know what I want to to do as a career. Like, why am I not old enough to know my orientation? You know?
Exactly. Well said.
It's also like age is such a big intersection with like the ace oppression and disability oppression, because you
Yes.
face like I got a lot, like, I don't know how many of y'all were in like special ed types things, but there's a lot of like, oh well, you're disabled, so you can't do this thing, so why even try? Um,
Yeah.
a lot of presumed competence, whereas the general best course is to presume competence. And then like age itself is such a weird thing in the ace community, because purely based on when I came out as ace, I've been being called an ace elder since I was like 20 years old. Which granted was like 2012, 2013. So having someone back then who was talking about like, oh, the ace community 5 years ago was like this, got a certain dynamic. But like, the biggest, frankly, bullshit, if you'll pardon my language, about the you're too young to know is that they keep saying that until you're in your 20s, if not 30. Like, it doesn't matter. There's always someone, generally someone older than you, who's like, oh, well, you just haven't met the right person yet. You're too young. You don't know. Doesn't
Yeah.
clearly not actually related to your age, even if age was relevant for that. Like, it's not. They can't even pretend that it actually has anything to do with age, because it doesn't matter the age. They keep saying it.
I had somebody last year tell me at age 37 that I'm still not old enough to know. And that how could I dare know that I won't find somebody? And I'm just like, what do I have to do to prove to you? First off, why do you care so much? And second, why are you telling me this when I've experienced this my entire life? I should know my own identity better than you ever will.
Yeah.
Can interject. Oh my fucking god.
Danielle, you're not on this
I know I'm
podcast.
not on this podcast. But
I'm
just
sorry, I
tell
have
them
a-
they're not straight. Just tell them they're not whatever they
was actually-
identify as.
I was actually going to bring that up. Is one of the biggest comebacks that I have found to be useful for folks who are saying that you're too young, who identify as monosexual identity, either heterosexual, homosexual, is, well, how do you know that you're not actually like, how do you, man, know that you're not actually into men? Because you haven't tried like every man out there. How do you know? And it works for people who have those monosexual identities. Obviously, if someone's bi, pan, ply, it's a lot less helpful. But depending on a lot of factors, and I tend to get that sort of response a lot, the most from folks who are who hold those monosexual identities, either or homosexual.
Exactly. Couple folks just want to catch up on the chat here. Sailor Mood mentioned, I'm 42 and people still infantilize my asexuality and my autism and question me whenever I make decisions that are related to sexuality or other adult things. I was not diagnosed with autism until 27, but people have consistently infantilized me in this way, regardless of diagnosis. So sorry, but it happens far, far too often.
It
And
really
the
does.
most infuriating thing is that if, autism diagnoses are extremely expensive to get as an adult. And
They are.
if you were not AMAB like me growing up in the 1990s, you were likely not going to get a diagnosis. There's so many things wrong with the way that, these diagnoses were made. And there's
Yeah.
still so much we don't understand. And so how dare somebody chastise you for not being diagnosed? Because how the hell do you get that diagnosis in the first place? In many cases.
What was it on the age thing? It was then you was saying earlier. Like everyone says, it's a load of nonsense. For example, another example here on the more disability front, people go like, this actually happened to me in a doctor's surgery. Is it? I have my stick. I was in my 20s at this point. You're too young to have a stick. You're too young to be disabled. You're not. What was it? This too young mind frame needs to stop. Anyone can be disabled. And on the other topic, anyone can be so and so at so and so age. The age stuff is just, it's just frustrating. It's just like, you don't know the person and what they're going through. You don't know what disabilities they're going through. You don't know what sexuality they're discovering. You don't know. It's just this, the whole age thing in society is just so frustrating. It's just people are just like, just judging by age, and that shouldn't be. It really shouldn't.
That reminds me of another thing I wanted to bring up about the intersection of disability and asexuality is like the ability to consent. I have literally been told by medical professionals that I would need to have a whole additional exam to be determined if I was, and I quote, cognitively capable of consent. And more than once I've been like sitting there about to have surgery, and they do the thing where like the doctor comes in to like ask if you have questions. I went to school for biology. I literally like speak to them in the academic language, and then they'll be looking at my paperwork or my diagnosis list and be like, wait, are you allowed to sign for yourself, or do we need a caregiver to sign for you?
Oh.
I am higher support needs. I was diagnosed as a toddler, an AFAB toddler in the 90s with autism. So the level that they stick on the diagnosis is a little like that's a factor. And some of my other diagnoses, I have a partial trisomy in my 21st chromosome, no, second chromosome, and left parietal hypogenesis. So there's some diagnoses that they just look at. And honestly, that's another thing that has in common with asexuality is a lot of people just look at the label and make a lot of assumptions about what it means without
Yeah.
actually bothering to know you.
There's a lot of variability under a label. A label doesn't on its own tell you anything. I like to say you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. You've met one asexual person, you've met one asexual person. Exactly. Lots and lots of good discussion in the chat here. Bunny was mentioning the way I got diagnosed was through my disabilities program. So they got theirs for free because of academic and speech disabilities. Sailor Moon mentioned I was too functional to even be considered growing up as autistic. But yeah, I mean, one of the very common things that AFAB individuals had to do was mask, and that masking basically made it impossible to be diagnosed growing up. There's only recognition now of that, and it's been erased for so many years. And even now within the medical community, there's so many issues and the cost, the prohibitive costs to be diagnosed as an adult make it so incredibly hard for most folks to be able to get that diagnosis.
Yeah. More people are getting more aware that they may be neurodivergent in some form, and because that more people are becoming more aware or are wanting to know who they are, the tests in the UK have now like closed. Waiting lists have officially closed because there's that much demand, and it's so sad because people deserve the answers, and unfortunately they're just not getting them. It's just so gutting.
There's been some really interesting conversation, especially in the last couple years, but for a while now, about whether or not you like seeking a diagnosis is even safe in the US.
Oh, that's
Um,
true. Yeah,
be-
I agree.
like you are diagnosed as autistic, you're not allowed to foster or adopt kids. A lot of countries won't allow you to immigrate there if you have an official autism diagnosis. Um, I wasn't allowed to donate plasma because of the whole not able to consent bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot of discussion in disability spaces. I am very involved in those about if you already are pretty certain, maybe you have peer diagnosis, for which, for those who aren't familiar with terms beyond like professional and self-diagnosis, a peer diagnosis is when like other autistics in your life are like, yeah, you're one of us.
Yeah.
And that's,
And
I think,
oh, yeah.
sorry, just finishing this up. But having an official diagnosis can bring a lot of limits without a lot of benefits other than that certainty, which is a catch-22 because autistics tend to enjoy having that certainty. But it, like, there's a question of, is it worth the discrimination, the limits in treatment, the limits in where you can move in the world, the limits in starting a family if you want to adopt or foster kids, the like all those limits. And especially now that they're trying to make a database of us. And when most of the accommodations for autism can actually be gotten through either an ADHD or anxiety diagnosis, there's a lot of overlap in accommodations there. So there's been a movement in the disability community of, if you don't have a specific need for an autism diagnosis specifically, a professional diagnosis is usually not worth it, both for the difficulty in accessing it and also for the discrimination that just that one label on paperwork brings.
yeah.
Such a good point. Absolutely.
Of course, many folks are diagnosed before they're adults or before they're even teens, thus don't have the choice.
Nope.
That's
So
true.
that's a separate topic.
Lots and lots of good discussion in the chat. Busby mentioned this was 100% me before I found out I was autistic. Still figuring out how to unmask and stop, driving myself into burnout, but I'm getting better at accommodating myself. Burnout is so incredibly common.
Yep. Pain in the bum.
And academia loves to ignore burnout and force you through.
Yeah.
There's also really not enough awareness of both autistic regression and autistic catatonia, which we do not have the time to cover here, but worth looking into.
Absolutely.
I also wanted to mention the fact that if you are autistic and asexual, that burnout can have a heavy effect on how you can experience like your asexuality as well, in my opinion. Like if you're someone who is like gray sexual and kind of on that like sliding scale or whatever, and who is also autistic, if you go into like burnout, you are going to you have the likelihood, the chance of experiencing like a higher level of basically like asexuality, of like complete like shutdown and killing of your like interest in sex, your sexual attraction, your libido, and everything like that. So I think it's worth noting the interaction that autism and asexuality can have together as well.
This is such a complex and multi-dimensional discussion that we're not going to be able to cover all of in one discussion at all. So definitely want to continue to revisit this in the future, because there's so many things that we're not going to be able to cover just because of the time constraints, unfortunately. So many
Yeah.
wonderful things that are being mentioned here. Yep, burnout, absolutely. I hit burnout, definitely tips me into, depressive and anxiety states for sure. And then I start self-doubting my ability to finish the PhD, and it's just a vicious cycle. Everyone here is super awesome. Y'all are awesome. Can't quite see what that is. Are you able to hold it a little bit closer?
It's a heart. It's just a cultural difference versus doing the.
Oh,
this
I
thing.
see. Yeah. I thought you had something in your
Oh.
hand. Sorry. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
My fingers
Are we
don't,
harping? I
my
don't know if I
fingers
can
go a
do
little too far backwards to do the normal heart one.
Yeah.
Is that it? I don't know if I can do it.
Aw. So have folks here seen the disabled Ace Day logo before? I'll share it in the chat as well so folks know what we're talking about.
I don't know if I've seen it before, but I have seen it on the thing you sent me.
Yeah, so I'll share a link to the logo, because there is something I want to talk about with regards to it.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's worth having as a discussion. I
agree.
just got to find where it was where the original logo came from.
Okay.
It's so I'll just share it. It's under aceweek.org/stories under that resources list. So if you click on that link in the chat, you'll see a picture of somebody in a wheelchair holding a ACE flag behind them, and it says Disabled ACE Day. And so I wanted to talk about, the symbolism here of a wheelchair user as the disabled ACE, and whether that's really reflective of the experiences of all disabled ACEs, and whether is that the right symbol. You know, I don't know if what the answer is for this, but I think it's something that's worth talking about at least. Do you folks have folks seen the logo in the chat or in the document there?
Yeah, I've got it. Still got it up. I've got it in the document. And I can see why some think it's like. I see why some think it's fine the way it is, but I can also see why people may not think it's fine the way it is, because especially people
exactly.
with invisible disabilities,
Yeah.
because they may feel like they might feel get a bit of imposter syndrome or feel like they're left out, because not everyone uses a wheelchair.
Mhm.
And I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. I mainly use a
Absolutely.
stick. So I can understand both points of view with this. Like
I do too.
People may think it's fine because when you get like disabled toilets and stuff, yeah, it's normally a wheelchair. But I notice these days there's also it's showing like figures with sticks, or there's like signs reading not all disabilities are visible. They're showing that on like disabled toilets in the UK now. So it's getting more recognition for multiple disabilities rather than just like ones that like are in wheelchairs, because there is so many different kinds. And people obviously easily judge, thinking if someone's standing and not disabled. That's not the case. You don't know what they're going through inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely see both points on this, and that's why I just wanted to bring it up as food for thought here.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one.
It is a kind of universally recognized disability symbol, absolutely. What was
But
your...
I think it's. Oh, sorry. What
Oh,
were you
I
saying?
was just wondering where which comment you were replying to there, Raven.
Oh, the one in my perspective one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, what was that? I agree with you, Bunny. It is like seen as like the disability symbol. But and I'm totally fine with that. Like I said, I see it on both sides. But nowadays they're starting to show more symbols to like reflect more disabilities, which is why I can see why some aren't okay with it, because it's like more adjusting to what's happening on signs nowadays, especially in like countries like the UK. You see what I mean?
I know that
I've seen some. Oh, sorry.
I
I was just gonna say I've seen some signs that include like multiple examples on the same sign, which I think maybe is what Raven was talking about, where it's like they'll include a wheelchair user, they'll include a person using like a stick or whatever. They'll include like multiple examples of different types of disabilities and stuff like that, which I think I actually really like those ones like a lot. Like I don't have like a personal issue with like just the wheelchair as like a design choice, but like I think you can still fit from the signs that I've seen, like the multi like example little people on signs and stuff like that, and not have it be like too busy or too crowded from a design perspective, and like still get the like more inclusive message across for sure.
Yes, I agree.
It's also worth looking at the difference between a logo and a sign.
Good point.
A sign has a lot more space, a lot more option. A logo, like one of the core fundamentals of like vexillology is that which is the study of flags, is that a 5-year-old should be able to draw it from memory. So the minute you start adding more symbols, it's also one of the most recognizable, like internationally. Going back to like the discussion of a lot of the ACE discourse is very Western, very like Western white focused. Like looking at symbols that are internationally recognized and making sure those are included so that we're not just leaving out the rest of the world.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Because like there's other symbols, like I think of the UK's sunflower for invisible disabilities. That's barely recognized in the US outside of disability
No,
space.
absolutely not.
I know,
I wouldn't
you're
have
right, you're
recognized
right.
it.
You're right. You are right.
It's that is the symbol that exists for like the broadest example, and it's used on a lot of things that have nothing to do with mobility disabilities either.
Mhm.
Like I'll see that symbol used to designate like this is where you go for so I'm hard of hearing, and like the tech to connect that to the loop things and whatnot, like we'll sometimes have like they'll have like speaker logo or whatever too, but they'll have a wheelchair logo because that is the go-to symbol for like disability that the most people are going to recognize.
Mhm.
And do I think that we need a better symbol? Yes, but I don't think that that's necessarily something that the ACE community is going to be able to solve.
No.
That's true.
Because that is a broader disability like symbology thing.
Mhm. Absolutely. Bunny mentioned I'm also coming from a family that's from a U.S. territory, Caribbean, as well, and we only have the wheelchair logo in the Caribbean as the universally recognized disability symbol. Very good point. That's why I wanted to bring this up. You know, it's a very multifaceted discussion with so many angles to consider, and definitely great point, Devin. I don't think it's for ACEs to decide
I
themselves.
think that, sorry, another tangent is that I've been seeing wheelchair users getting some of the same like accidental sidelining that we talked about earlier in the interaction between asexuality and disability, where like disability communities are like, oh, we're sexual beings just like you, and ace communities are like, we're not broken, and are both inherently leaving each other out. I've been seeing a lot in disability spaces of people being like, not all disabled, like not all disabled people use wheelchairs, and like ignoring the ones who do, and like erase folks.
Yeah.
Hell, even in wheelchair communities, there's like a, oh, like we're like X percentage of wheelchair users are ambulatory, and it's been causing issues with folks who aren't in actually medical section, because now like because of that like pushback trying to counteract a very real problem, people who aren't ambulatory are being assumed that they can and are like, oh, just like transfer to this. And they're like, I can't transfer without a Hoyer lift. Like you're supposed to have one provided. So that like accidental erasure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let the doggo barge in. Mine did it.
Sorry?
Responding to the chat. There's doggo conversation in chat.
Oh.
And as far as like why people are looking wherever, like, I mean, we already talked about how many of us are neurodivergent. Eye contact with a camera is just as bad as eye contact for me. Plus, I have a massive bin of fidget toys I have to avail myself of.
Hell yes. That's amazing.
Oh, I'm looking down because I'm fidgeting with little wormy buddies.
I have my dog.
Aw.
I could make these into earrings. I don't have pierced ears, but I could make these into earrings.
That would look so good. I would love that. Those would be great.
Yeah, if they're the same color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Tangent. Sorry.
You're okay.
Yep, absolutely.
I've unleashed the dog.
Doggo.
Unleash the popper.
One come
Any other thoughts, Mick or Busby?
Head empty.
Mood.
Yeah, I think everything that I wanted to say has already been said. So
Perfect. So just thinking back to kind of Disabled Ace Day, you know, being started in 2021 and then nothing really been posted about since 2023 that I can find. I'm not saying it hasn't been, but like the Ace Week website hasn't been updated. And I haven't seen a whole lot that's been posted about Disabled Ace Day in the recent past. I know that this unfortunately means that many folks aren't even aware that Disabled Day is a thing. You know, I come across so many disabled aces. They're like, there's a Disabled Ace Day? I'm like, yep, Wednesday of Ace Week. And I know that, you know, folks are out there doing some great work. For example, Sarah Cosgriff, who was featured on episode 13 of the podcast, makes sure to do profiles on disabled aces every year during Ace Week. However, I would say that unfortunately, and I think this goes back to, unfortunately, broader ableism, there's just hasn't been much, the broader ACE community hasn't embraced Disabled Ace Day as a whole.
This is pre-2023, so it doesn't help with more recent times, but going back to creating change, that conference, the first day of it, they do these day-long learning institutes, and in 2022, the conference was virtual, and we got them to like accept ACE day-long institute, and I was part of the team helping run that, despite not being part of the org that was officially running it, because I just end up involved in things. And we had presentations on asexuality and disability, asexuality and neurodivergence, and there was a third one that was relevant too, like 3 separate things as part of the like ACE Justice Institute.
I'd love to learn more about that for sure.
Maybe, I think it was 2022.
Yeah. That's really interesting to hear. It's unfortunate that I don't think it could be a fact that since 2023, other than the events list, there hasn't been much updated on the Ace Week website as a whole. So that might be why there hasn't been much posted.
Burnout comes for us all.
Yeah, and I also get the fact that it's unfortunately on disabled aces usually themselves to post content, and unfortunately many disabled folks just don't have the energy many times to do so, and that plays into it obviously too. So
As a mood.
it's something I'd love to see more broadly embraced and talked about, but unfortunately, it usually falls on us as disabled aces to do it. So we got about 12 minutes before the ad break. We'll play. I can run it earlier if we want and take a short break before coming back to the final question of the podcast. How are folks doing at this point? Do you want to take another break here?
I think having a break now rather than 12 minutes into discussing the next question
I agree.
makes sense.
I am 100% in agreement.
I agree.
So let's run a ad break. We'll be on a BRB screen, and we'll be back in a few minutes, and I'll see you on the other side. So this question alone could be a whole podcast unto itself, because there's so much we could talk about here. But I know that, we do need to, I know that a couple folks need to, wrap things up in the next half hour or so. So I want to be mindful of that. So I don't think we'll be able to get into this in as much detail as, I'd love to. But kind of building off what we talked about and, your own lived experiences, how do we make room for an ACE discourse that's more inclusive of disabled ACEs?
I can go. I'm trying to not jump in first again, but if no one else is gonna. I think the biggest thing is to just, I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier. Like, if you've met one disabled ACE, you've met one disabled ACE. Like, not making assumptions, not extrapolating out, not assuming that you think you know things about the person purely from those two labels. Because like those are both very broad labels that can mean a lot of different things. So just, I think the biggest way for making space in the ACE community for disabled ACEs is to remember that disabled ACEs are still individuals.
All with unique lived experiences, absolutely. As Sailor Mood said, outreach, talk to others, talk to them about, how can you be a better ally as well for them.
Yes, we need more allies for sure. Because I've like talked to like numerous people and they've like been really supportive. But I definitely had one former friend that just couldn't grasp, which is why it's good to talk to people about it so they can like try and get the cogs turning and start to understand. Because I remember when it happened to me with the specific person, they were asking me questions like, "How did you have kids?" and stuff like that. They just were struggling to grasp. Like, it's good to know not everyone will react the same. Not everyone's going to be supportive. Some people are going to be negative, but then some people are actually going to be either genuinely confused or just struggling to grasp. So that's the thing. But that's why it's good to outreach, like Sailor Mood says, for sure. That is definitely a good shout.
I also think that one of the really important parts about making sure that ACE discourse is inclusive, not just of disabled ACEs, but also everyone in the ACE community in general, is literally like just that. That's just the point, is inclusivity. I don't think that enough people approach discussions within the community from a standpoint of inclusivity, of actually considering everyone in the community and the different standpoints and stuff like that. Like, we touched on it a little bit earlier, like the standpoint of like BIPOC ACEs gets like overwritten a lot, completely disregarded a lot, and it's the same, maybe not to such a high degree, but it is similar for disabled ACEs as well, where
Yep.
these like multiply marginalized asexual people do not get actually considered in the discussions that much. It's very much, there's a very specific type of person that ends up leading the discourse that comes from a place of a high level of individualism, where it's like, well, what about me? What about like my experience. Like I'm your, typical asexual. Like I literally saw this like a couple of months ago where there was a person who was like, I want asexuality as its own like label or whatever. Like I don't want all of these people under the asexual spectrum to be included in this because I feel like it muddies asexuality, and I just want asexuality to be like, I don't want sex, I will never have sex, like it basically like a gold star asexual or whatever. And those are the types of people that can end up being the absolute loudest when it comes to discussions within the community and within ace discourse. So I feel like a lot of the times, unfortunately, it's kind of like one step forward, two steps back, where we have made progress, but it's not enough yet to where we can move on from having to remind people literally the simple fact to just be inclusive. Actually consider all of the people within the community. Stop trying to exclude people, stop trying to talk over people, especially the most marginalized people, such as disabled aces, BIPOC aces, disabled BIPOC aces, especially get like talked over so fucking much. It's like wild. So it's where I feel like in some cases we are still at the absolute beginning of the journey of actually being inclusive when it comes to ace discourse.
100%. 100%. Most ace content creators that I can think of on YouTube are white. Many are able-bodied, and they tend to be the one that gets the most airtime. That seems to lead much of the ace discourse, as you kind of mentioned. Fortunately. Any other thoughts about this topic, about anything else that we talked about today, or anything else that you might want to discuss that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet? Great point by Sailor Mood there, by the way.
All right.
The other queer folks saying aces aren't queer, or saying that aces making things worse are making things worse for other queer people, or people who always want to center someone like a white woman instead of centering BIPOC. Sailor Mood mentioned, I've said enough about my experiences at this point. I want to hear what others feel and think. And as somebody that has had a ton of privilege in my life, being AMAB, being white, I also don't want to be centered here either. I want to hear, others' thoughts here.
I think that's my mind emptied.
Sailor Mood, were you here when we talked about earlier the big exclusionary like doxing thing in like 2014? Because I know we talked about some of that, but I don't want to like recap it if everyone heard it already.
Sailor Mood mentioned they had not heard that.
Um, So back in, again, I think it was 2014, but I could have the year wrong because one, time is fake. Two, I've had 19 traumatic brain injuries, so brain no work. Diagnosed. Sorry, I have a partner who gets upset if I don't clarify diagnosed and goes on a rant. So, anyways, it's like not only was that a lot of people's first exposure to the ACE community was this huge like spectacle of basically any ACE content creator at the time getting doxxed and getting their personal information spread around. It's also why a lot of people like in the ACE community either stopped or never got into making content. And then on the other hand, you also have like there's a lot of hatred towards disabled content creators as well. Like I believe it's been shut down, but there was a long running Reddit subreddit that the entire point of it was taking bets, well, making bets on what disabled content creator would die next. And it's disgusting, frankly. It's disgusting the way that like people who are multiply marginalized a lot of the times are the ones in the most danger of having their voices heard. Because like people who like say a cis white able-bodied etc gay man is at a lot less risk of having things like doxing and other danger than when like someone who is POC or disabled or ACE, because we get from the outside, we get a lot of the same hate, and then we get extra hate on top of that for being ourselves and for who we are. So it stacks. I mean, that's what intersectionality is looking at the ways, well, it's a part of it, is looking at the ways that like just looking at the experiences of the two identities separately doesn't sum up the like cumulative effect.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's why you can't talk about ACE identity without accounting for intersectional identity. Did you make them into earrings?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. That's amazing.
Oh wow.
I do a lot of crafty shit. I joke that it's the mix of rampant ADHD and queer audacity. But there's very few crafts I haven't experimented with.
Chris mentioned, I mentioned in the podcast episode I was in, the tendency for media to avoid POC main characters of differing races carrying a romantic or sexual plot line. And I think that's a sign of how uncomfortable mainstream society is without talking about any sort of stigma there is behind highlighting conversations around any sort of sexuality for POC communities because of the dangerous stereotypes put against POC and its implications for people who identify under the ACE umbrella. Very good point. Most of the ACE limited ACE representation, and I talked about this with Mick when I interviewed Mick back during Pride Month, is that most of the representation is of white aces. There's very, very little POC ace representation at all in mainstream media. And, you know, as you add more and more levels of marginalization, the harder and harder it is to find your experience.
I cannot think of a single example of a disabled ace person of color in mainstream media. Granted, I also don't engage a lot with mainstream media, so I'm sure that factors in, but all the examples I can think of are either headcanons or like fandom
Mm-hmm.
fan creations.
Yep. People can't even, you know, talk about heteronormative sexuality for POC. Imagine how much less, you know, POC and BIPOC aces are getting in terms of representation. And what about disabled POC and BIPOC aces? Well, the more levels of intersections you include, the less and less there is. Absolutely. I mean, ace representation as a whole is awful to begin with. Just from the start. We've talked about it many times.
It's interesting to me hearing that, because I definitely agree, but also like I remember when I was doing like Ace 101 presentations in like 2012, and like we're like examples of media. Well, there's these fan characters that people generally like fan assign asexuality to, but there at the time were no canonically ace characters in media, in mainstream media. So like while it's still so bad and needs so much more, it's also interesting to me because like I don't know, to a starving man, a bowl of rice is a feast. To borrow the quote expression, whatever, like looking at the difference in the positive change, where it's like we went from 0 to like 0.001%, but that's still 0.001% than what I remember having when I was trying to find anything for those early presentations. So it's, I guess, going back to there's like I see so many angles on it.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is an important discussion that, you know, we need to continue to have on multiple fronts. That's so valid, Chris. Some days, you know, that's why I can usually only, you know, run the podcast once a month myself, because I've got to fit it in between the PhD and all the other stuff. So I completely appreciate that. It takes a lot of, you know, planning to do. So it's definitely, you know, it's on us as the disabled aces to make this content, have these discussions, and we're the, you know, often the ones with the least spoons to begin with, unfortunately.
And to build on that, the most forks, and the forks are just building in modern day.
Yep. Any other thoughts, folks, before we wrap up the podcast?
I'm good.
Mick or Busby?
I'm good.
Sounds good. All right. I
Yeah,
want to
speaking of
thank.
spoons, mine are gone.
Yeah, head empty. That's a mood. I want
It's
to
done great.
thank everybody again for joining us today. I want to thank Mick, Busby, Raven, and Devin for volunteering their time and being so flexible and allowing me to organize this panel talk, because I could not do it with all of your help. Thank you so much to everybody in the chat for having such awesome, important discussions today.
Thank you for having me. It's a
Absolutely.
massive
Thank
honor
you
to
so
be here
much.
amongst you and legends. You're all the best.
Thank you. I can't do this podcast without all of y'all's support and time. So this is not possible without you. I'd like to ask everybody where we can find you on the socials. We'll start with Mick. Where can we find you on the socials?
You can find me at Mctastic on Twitch, also Mctastic on Blue Sky, and Baron Von Mick on SoundCloud.
Awesome. And I gave you a shout out there in the chat. Definitely go follow Mick. Also makes some really awesome music too. So definitely go check that out. Busby, where can we find you on the socials?
You can find me at Bumblin Busby on Twitch, just Busby on Blue Sky, and busby.ig on Instagram.
Let me try that again. Give you another shout out. Raven, where can we find you on the socials?
You can find me on socials as the Demented Raven, pretty much everywhere. Bandcamp, Instagram, Blue Sky, and on X it's T Demented Raven. But if you type the Demented Raven anywhere, you'll probably find me.
And I don't know if I actually have any of your social links, Devin.
I keep my social media and my real life identity, including my face, completely separate due to experience with doxing.
Yep, understandable.
And my voice, anything that could be identifying, which there's been enough information that I've disclosed just in this chat that you could find my real life. So I would rather not share my social media.
Totally fair. That
That's
is
fair.
totally fair. Absolutely.
I also don't much because my energy is occupied with, as I mentioned, I'm on the board of a resource center. I co-run a queer youth group, and then just, the full-time job of being disabled.
Mm-hmm.
And then my actual job, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't do a whole lot of content creation that isn't just speaking at real life things.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if you want to see, go to Creating Change in January.
Yeah.
Because that's the next place to speak.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much again. We're going to go on a raid at this